Years from now. Purple sweet potato essence arrived at the blue star. I thought I could be invincible on this planet, but it turned out to be a head-on blow. A magic move that made him feel heart-pounding struck him, and an antimatter bomb that made him feel deadly broke through the space and landed in front of him. A vast spiritual force like the sea rushed into his mind. Faced with such a scene, Purple Potato Spirit was skeptical and uncertain. What's the situation? Isn't it true that there are no strong ones on this planet? How could anyone launch such a powerful attack? But this statement completely shattered the defense of the three people who caused these attacks. Malfoy's eyes were bloodshot, his throat hoarse, and he trembled as he said, "Very strong. If it weren't for defeating that bastard, I would rather not have such strong strength." Tony's face turned pale and twisted as he said, "Do you know what I've experienced? You don't even know." Professor X's eyes were tightly closed, his face full of pain, but he remained silent. Keywords of the novel. Starting from Hogwarts, no pop-ups in the volume. Starting from Hogwarts, downloading the complete TXT volume. Starting from Hogwarts, reading the latest chapters in the volume. Chapter 1. Awakening. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Awakening 1986 Sakura Kingdom Fog City A window room on the second floor of a villa located in the city center. The room is not large, and the interior decoration design and display are also very simple. The white walls, wooden floors, bed, table, wardrobe, white curtains, and a few green plants placed at the window edges are everything in the room. However, the room is simple, but what happens inside at this time is not simple. I saw a cute little boy with golden hair, blue eyes, wearing a white shirt and jeans, who looked only 5 or 6 years old. He was staring at the table in front of him, his face slightly turning red, as if exerting force. Strangely, on the table he was staring at, a pencil was swaying and floating off the table. "Get up, get up." William Lee looked at the scene in front of him with excitement on his face. Lee Wilhelm, 6 years old, a traveler. Before the crossing, he was an orphan. Relying on almost desperate hard work, he finally bought a car and a house before he was 30 years old. Well, he paid 8,000 yuan, and with his handsome face, he met a rich woman who was several years older than him, was quite good, and had an awesome figure, and gave 3 million yuan. Later, because he wanted to go hiking and relax, he encountered a landslide and died on the spot. Result. As soon as his eyes closed and opened, he crossed over and became a newborn baby. He is very happy about this. He doesn't know how he crossed over, but after death, he can still live for a lifetime. Who can't be unhappy? In addition, after traveling, through observing the surrounding environment, he discovered that the technological level of this world is equivalent to that of the 1970s and 1980s. This time, he became even happier. If it were really the 1970s and 1980s, he could have relied on a vision beyond the times to show off his skills, earn a lot of money, and live a luxurious life of extravagance from then on. Just as he grew up, through various channels such as news, television, and gossip, he gradually learned about the world and became less happy. Yes. The current environment in this world is indeed quite good, equivalent to the 1970s and 1980s. But this world is not the ordinary technological world he used to be in, but a dangerous world of beautiful comics. Not only does it have Stark Industries, but it also has X.Men, SHID, and so on. According to historical records, a few decades ago there was a guy named Steve, known as the Captain, who fought bravely and thwarted the conspiracy of the Hydra. Lee Wilhelm, who had originally planned to use a vision beyond the times to show off his skills, suddenly wilted after learning about this, and his chaotic thoughts were all gone. He was only prepared to make some small money and wait to die. Why? Because I don't have the strength. Before crossing over, as an orphan and helpless, he could be said to understand the essence of the world better than anyone else. The law of the jungle. If you don't have the strength to protect yourself, no matter how much money you earn, you will be devoured by strength. In the ordinary world, the law of the jungle is generally based on relationships and means. Whoever has a strong relationship and powerful means is strong, and whoever can devour the weak. What about the comic world? By relationships, by means. No, no, no. Relying on extraordinary abilities. Think about it, when a person has extraordinary abilities, they will care about what relationships you have and what means you have. Obviously not. I already have extraordinary abilities. I don't care about your relationships or methods. Can your relationship and methods be as tough as mine? So, in the world of beauty and manga, strength is extraordinary ability. Unfortunately, William Lee was only born into an ordinary family in this world. There is no gene mutation like Peter, no technology savvy like Tony, and even as a traveler, there is no essential golden finger, a pure and ordinary person with 3 knots. Don't talk about superheroes or supervillains, even ordinary mutants can't handle them. In this situation, if he makes money and is targeted by someone with extraordinary abilities, he will directly use his extraordinary abilities to break into his company, his home, and pinch his neck to ask if he wants it. Will he give it or not? The answer is very clear. Therefore, he had the intention of earning a little money and putting it on the shelf to die. What can we do without showing off our strength? But after waking up in the morning, his thoughts changed. He felt that perhaps he could do something in this world, at least by relying on a vision beyond the times, making some money, and even fighting for the position of the world's richest person, living a luxurious life and so on, without any problem. Why is there such a big transformation? It's very simple. He awakened. This morning when he woke up, he felt a faint awakening of power deep within his body. This situation, when placed in the previous world, he may feel that it is his illusion. But this is a world of beautiful comics. So, he believes it may be because his X gene has awakened. Well, don't ask him why he thinks it's because the X gene has awakened. He is not Peter, nor has he been bitten by a spider. In this world, he inexplicably awakens. What else can he be besides the X gene? The only problem was that at that time, he only felt the power to awaken and did not know what ability he had awakened. Of course. This is not a big problem. Just test it, okay? So, he started testing himself early in the morning to see if he could set fire, discharge electricity, or teleport. Finally. The current scene has appeared. Thinking. Pop it. Suddenly, the pencil floating in mid-air fell onto the table, at the same time. Lee Wilhelm also felt as if his body had been hollowed out, with waves of weakness coming from him. But he didn't care, instead he was very happy. Anyway, everything that just happened proved that his guess was correct, and he woke up. Even though the awakened power seems a bit weak and has a short duration, it is still awakened no matter what. Is it better than ordinary people before? Say it again. The genetic ability of X can be improved. Don't you see, when Lao Wan was a child, he couldn't even move a coin, but later he could even control a missile. It doesn't matter if you have weaknesses now, but if you train in the future, you will become stronger. But happy. Lee Williams suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but frown. Should I tell my parents? He hesitated. William Lee in this life is different from his previous life. He has parents in this lifetime, and they are still very kind to him. And the reason why he hesitates is partly because his parents have been very kind to him in this lifetime, making him feel a family relationship he has never had before, so he doesn't want to hide it from his parents. On the other hand, he is afraid that they will worry. The X gene ability is considered a good ability by William Lee, but it is discriminated against in the larger environment of this world. Those who have watched movies know that due to their extraordinary and intimidating power, as well as their inability to control their power when they first awaken, they are often prone to harm others. There are also many organizations and institutions that secretly promote them, among other reasons. People with genetic awakening, commonly known as mutants, are considered monsters by the public and face serious discrimination. Not only do unrelated people discriminate against them, but also some ignorant parents treat them as monsters and find people to catch or directly drive them out of their homes. Although he doesn't think his parents will ignorant and drive him out of the house or think he's a monster, the problem is that once they know, they will definitely be worried. Finally, let's talk about it. After thinking it over, he still decided to say it. This may make them worried, but at the same time, it may also avoid some unnecessary dangers. Having watched related movies and TV dramas, he knows that there are many institutions and organizations secretly arresting, killing mutants, and conducting experiments on them. For example, Sentinels, the military of the United States, and so on. Even in movies and TV dramas, most institutions and organizations appear in the beautiful country, but William Lee cannot be certain that they do not exist in Sakura country. What if there is one? What if we find him? What if he finds his parents? In this situation, if they know it's okay, they will be prepared, but if someone comes knocking on them without knowing it, it's very dangerous. Thinking of this, Lee Wilhelm, who had made a decision, didn't hesitate and turned around and went downstairs. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Mind Explosion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Mind Explosion. Just came downstairs. He saw two people busy in the kitchen at a glance. A middle-aged man with a slightly beer belly, wearing a suit pants, a white shirt, an apron on the front, and a big back, looking around 30 or 40 years old, with a friendly face, was frying vegetables in front of the stove. A beautiful woman with blonde hair, blue eyes, wearing jeans, white short sleeves, fair skin, washing vegetables, and looking in her 30s and 40s. The two are exactly the parents of William Lee in his lifetime. Lee Wenhua and Mary Taylor. Well, that's right. In this lifetime, William Lee is of mixed race. His father, Lee Wenhua, was born in the Dragon Kingdom. Later, due to the chaotic situation, he followed his father, Lee William's grandfather, to Xiangjiang for refuge. However, more than a decade ago, due to the poor security in Xiangjiang at that time, he chose to come to Sakura Kingdom for development. Later, relying on his excellent ancestral cooking skills, he successfully established himself in Sakura country and opened his own large restaurant. He also captured the heart of William Lee's mother, Mary Taylor, and finally gave birth to William Lee. The name Lee Wilhelm, which combines Chinese and Western names, was also derived from their different naming habits and mutual accommodation. As soon as William Lee went downstairs, Mary Taylor, who was washing vegetables, discovered it. "Baby, is there something wrong with your expression?" Looking at his hesitant expression, Mary frowned and immediately realized something was wrong, and asked with concern. "Listen to this." Lee Wenhua, who was still cooking, turned around and looked at Lee Wilhelm's hesitant expression, wondering, what's going on? "What's on your mind?" Lee Wilhelm hesitated as he listened to their words and said, "It's not a concern either, it's just that I have something important to tell you." "Oh. What's going on?" Lee Wenhua simply put down the spoon in his hand, looked at him seriously, and asked. Mary Taylor, who was standing beside her, also chose to put down her work and looked at William Lee, smiling slightly, waiting for him to speak. "I have to say. As parents, the two are absolutely qualified. If ordinary parents and 6-year-old children say this, they are likely to think that the other person wants to say something trivial in their eyes, and even if they want to listen, they won't pay too much attention. But their current actions undoubtedly demonstrate their respect and concern for William Lee. Of course. This is also related to William Lee's performance over the years. Although they appear to be children on the outside, their inner selves have matured. Their usual behavior habits, whether intentional or unintentional, carry the maturity and stability of adults. Over time, gradually, the two of them have a greater trust in William Lee than ordinary parents do in their children. I am awakened. Feeling the gaze of the two, William Lee took a deep breath. After saying these words, fearing that they might think he was joking, he emphasized with a serious expression, I have awakened the X gene. Upon hearing this, Lee Wenhua was immediately stunned. Mary Taylor quickly confirmed, baby, are you telling the truth? Have you awakened the X gene? Yes. After nodding his head, William Lee briefly recounted what had happened in the morning and said, I woke up early this morning and vaguely felt like there was an inexplicable power awakening in my body. Later, I gave it a simple try and found that I could control an inexplicable energy to move objects. After thinking for a moment, he took out a coin from his pocket and placed it on the ground. Then, he took a deep breath and stared at the coins on the ground with burning eyes, beginning to exert force. Next second, the coin moved slightly. Although it's not big and cannot be compared to the scene that just floated up, this is enough to prove the authenticity of his words. Momently Wenhua's face became unusually serious. Mary Taylor's reaction was somewhat strange. First was surprise, then hesitation, and finally took a deep breath, as if prepared for something. But before she could do anything, Lee Wenhua spoke solemnly to Lee William and asked, have you told anyone else about this? No. William Lee shook his head. After a slight sigh of relief, Lee Wenhua said seriously, if that's the case, then things will be much easier to handle. After awakening, you are no different from a normal person. In this case, as long as our family doesn't talk and you don't go out to show your awakening ability, no one will know, and naturally there will be no trouble. After a pause, he walked forward and grabbed Lee Wilhelm's shoulders, emphasizing in an unusually serious tone, so, let's not talk about this, and you should not show it in front of outsiders in the future. No, don't show it at all, just pretend it hasn't happened, understand? William Lee nodded solemnly. As someone who has watched movies and TV dramas, he is well aware of the dangers of this world and its malice towards mutants. Before it reaches a certain level of strength, he will not kill himself. At this moment, Mary Taylor glanced at the two of them, but hesitated and said, well, I have something to say. I've been hiding something from you for a long time. Lee Wenhua raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion, Mary, is there anything hidden that needs to be said at this time? I think it's better to talk about William's X gene now. No, this matter is really important, and it's also about William's awakening. Mary Taylor shook her head and said. Upon hearing this, both Lee Wilhelm and Lee Wenhua couldn't help but look surprised. They really can't figure out how their William awakening can still be related to what Mary Taylor said. They all turned their gaze to Mary Taylor, waiting for her to explain. Mary Taylor looked at the two without hesitation and explained directly, actually, William's awakening was not a genetic awakening, but a magical awakening. After a pause, she said again, and I've been hiding something from you all along. I'm a wizard. While speaking, as if to increase credibility, Mary Taylor simply took out a small stick with arm length and recited, fluorescent flicker, incantation. Next second, a large dazzling light appeared, illuminating the entire house. After finishing all of this, she watched as the two continued to explain, I graduated from Hogwarts, a school in the wizarding world. After graduation, because there was some chaos in the wizarding world at that time, I chose to leave and live in the world of ordinary people. And later I met you, and later you all knew. The words fell. Looking at the light and then at Mary Taylor, Lee Wenhua was deeply shocked and couldn't extricate himself. He never expected that the people he spent his days with would still have such hidden identities. And what about William Lee? Explosive mentality. What is surprise? This is called surprise. This is his meow surprise. This is called his meow surprise. Hogwarts, these two words in the wizarding world made him instantly aware of something. This is not just a world of comics, but also Harry Potter. What's even more alarming is that what he's currently awakening is not his self-proclaimed awakening of the X gene, but a magical awakening. This one shot him from heaven to hell. Well, although both are awakenings, there is a difference between awakening and awakening. Compare the upper limits of the two. The X gene is trained to its strongest, such as Professor X and Magneto, both of which are enemies of one country. With the addition of equipment, Professor X can even instantly kill people from all over the world. Even if not every mutant can reach that level, at least the upper limit of strength is there. But what about wizards? From the movie, it can be seen that the most powerful Voldemort, Dumbledore, and the like, can easily defeat a district or county of a city even if they hold on to it. While not engaging in direct combat, constantly using phantom shifts to engage in guerrilla warfare, and also resting to restore their magic. How could William Lee not have an explosive mentality despite such a huge gap? If it were an ordinary world or a pure Harry Potter world, it would be fine, but this is a world of comics. Professor X, Magneto or similar, although powerful, they are not the strongest, there are even stronger ones. For example, things like Guy Mage, Odin, Purple Potato Spirit Destroyer, and so on. The awakening of the X gene may lead to training at its strongest in the future, and it is possible that it may have been used twice during the invasion of Purple Sweet Potato Essence. Magic awakens what, is this about him holding a small wooden stick and saying, Avada gnaws on a big melon, to Purple Potato Essence in the future, and then laughing to death. And just when William Lee's mentality exploded. Suddenly. Ding, a cold mechanical sound echoed in his mind, pulling him from the brink of collapse. Golden Finger is online. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Systems with billion-point losses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3, Systems with billion-point losses, ding. The internal role system has automatically bound to the host. Tip. The specific usage method of the system can be obtained by silently reciting in your mind after opening the system panel. This prompt is only reminded once. The sound in his mind made Lee Wilhelm, whose mood had plummeted, suddenly become happy. As a traveler, can he not know what this is? Lee Wilhelm, who was originally still awakening for himself not because of his X genes but because of his magic and collapsed, instantly didn't care what he was awakening for. Just kidding. With the system in place, there's no difference in awakening anything. Wait, no, what if this is a farming system? Lee William, who was feeling happy, thought of this possibility and quickly regained his composure. If the system's goods are not up to par, in this dangerous world, what kind of farming, breeding and other leisure systems should be given, then what should be done is still done. So, at present, the most important thing is to understand the specific usage of the system. But just as he was about to open the system panel and figure out what system it was. I didn't expect you to still have this kind of identity. After being shocked for a while, Li Wenhua woke up and couldn't help but ask curiously, is the wizarding world exclusive to wizards? Is there also a school there? Is there a hospital there? Is there a clothing store? Is there a shop? Also, why are there wizards in this world that I don't know and haven't heard of? If I become a wizard, will I also face discrimination? A series of questions came out of his mouth. As an ordinary person, I am naturally curious about these things. Regarding this, Mary also answered one by one, saying, the wizarding world is what wizards call their own world. There are schools there, and every little wizard who awakens their magic will receive admission notices from the school when they are 11 years old. As for hospitals, clothing stores, and shops, they all have them, except for some special and exclusive places, everything else is similar to the outside world. And why don't you know? It's simple, because there are rules in the wizarding world that wizards can't let ordinary people other than their own relatives know they're wizards, nor can they show their extraordinary abilities in front of them, even if they're not careful. Once the other person sees them, they must clear their memory. If you don't want to, there may even be an official organization in the wizarding world, known as the Ministry of Magic, coming forward to clear the memories of those you see, so wizards don't know much. As for discrimination, generally speaking, it won't happen. Those who can know the identity of wizards are wizards or relatives, and in most cases, there will definitely be no discrimination. Of course, it cannot be ruled out that in a small number of cases, relatives of wizards from ordinary backgrounds may discriminate against wizards, but it definitely won't happen in our family. The words fell. Oh. Li Wenhua suddenly realized. At this moment, Mary looked at Li Wenhua with some nervousness and asked cautiously, I concealed the fact that I am a wizard from you. You won't blame me, will you? Li Wenhua looked at Mary's anxious appearance and burst into laughter. He reached out his hand and gently hugged Mary before saying, How can I blame you? You are my favorite person. Upon hearing this, Mary, who only felt a warmth in her heart, leaned her head against Li Wenhua's chest. Seeing this scene. William Li showed a speechless expression on his face. Early in the morning, watching this scene of showing affection, being fed such a mouthful of dog food fiercely, really uncomfortable. Thinking. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll go back to my room first. William Li could only speak. The reason for going back is twofold. On the one hand, I don't want to eat dog food anymore and watch the two show off their love. On the other hand, and most importantly, I want to quickly study the usage of the system. And in response, the two of them, who were immersed in sweetness, waved their hands together, indicating that he was at ease. Sure enough. Parents are true love, children are accidents. Upon seeing this, Li Wilhelm shook his head in silence before turning and leaving. In the room. Open the system panel. Li Williams sat on the bed, thinking to himself for a moment. Next second. A panel suddenly appeared in sight. Internal winding system, internal convolution value. 0, skill list, language, LV 0.123/1000. Chinese, LV 2.325/400, English, LV 1.12/200, Cantonese, LV 0.35/100. Mathematics, LV 0.225/10W. Number theory, LV 0.25/1000, algebra, LV 0.12/1000, cooking skill, LV 0.755/1000. Spicy chicken, LV 1.1/20, mapo tofu, LV 1. May 10th. Meanwhile, a massive amount of information flooded into William Li's mind. Moment he understood the functionality of the entire system. From the name of the involution system, Li Wilhelm's subconscious idea was to have him involute, but after knowing the full name and function of the system, he realized that his idea was completely wrong. The involution system is just an abbreviation. The full name of the system is, as long as you make others curl up, you can infinitely strengthen the system. That's right. The system doesn't even want him to be implicated. As its name suggests, as long as William Li uses various means, including but not limited to coercion or inducement, to make others actively engage in internal competition, he can obtain internal competition points. And the internal competition value can be added to the skills he has mastered, allowing him to quickly master the skills and infinitely increase their strength. Among them, LV0 to LV3 are the limits of the skill itself. Adding an inner convolution value between them can help him quickly master the skill, from unfamiliarity to mastery, while LV4 and later levels allow the skill to surpass its limits and become stronger. Of course, skills can not only be increased with internal competition points, but can also be practiced and improved by oneself, which can slow down by billions of points. Also, because the depth and difficulty of the skills themselves are different, the required inner roll values for skills of the same level are also different. And it should also be noted that others, who are caught up in internal competition, are not suitable for anyone. Must be a person with extraordinary abilities. including but not limited to Tony's extraordinary intelligence, or extraterrestrial beings like the Zatari, and the more powerful extraordinary beings contribute, the more internal competition points they have. At the same time, if the combat effectiveness is the same, there will be different internal competition values due to the amount of chi on their bodies. The stronger their chi, the more internal competition values they contribute. Look at this information. How can we say about this system? It's a billion-point loss. Lee Wilhelm's face showed a strange expression, and he couldn't help but think. But immediately, he chuckled again and said, however, I like it. The system is damaged, but it's not him who is damaged. Moreover, he is still the beneficiary. What is there to resist? Say it again. Can the system not be damaged again? Of course not. You know, this is a dangerous world of beautiful comics. If he doesn't use the system, even if he becomes a wizard, there is a great risk. After all, wizards are not strong either. Apart from having some extraordinary abilities, their bodies are almost no different from ordinary people. If someone shoots them, there is also a risk of sudden death on the spot. But with the system, not to mention anything else, as he had previously thought, holding a small wooden stick and giving a Avada gnawing on a big melon to purple potato essence seemed to be acceptable. Perhaps the power of Avada gnawing on big melons itself is like mosquito bites to purple potato essence. I can't bear it, it can improve infinitely. As long as there is unlimited improvement, and finally, Avada gnaws on the big melon, has the power to destroy heaven and earth, will mosquitoes still bite when facing the purple potato spirit? The answer is obvious. So, no matter how damaged the system is, it cannot be ignored. Also, it is worth mentioning here that there are differences in the skills within the system. There are two types: big skills and small skills. Taking the list as an example, the major skill is language, while the minor skills include Chinese, English, Cantonese, and so on. As for the difference between the two, take games like LOL and King as examples. Big skills are equivalent to understanding the game itself, including but not limited to understanding the game mechanics, overall perspective, and so on. Small skills are equivalent to understanding individual heroes in the game, including but not limited to their attack methods, skills, and other aspects. At the same time, there is a deep connection between the level improvement of big skills and small skills. When small skills improve, large skills will also increase by a certain amount. After the level of the major skill is improved, when learning the minor skill, the skill level after learning the minor skill is directly the same as the level of the major skill. As for why, when you play LOL, King, and train a hero to the extreme, even if you don't specifically study it, you will still gain some overall perspective and understanding of the game's mechanisms, right? Similarly, when you have a deep understanding of the game's mechanics and overall perspective, even if a new hero appears, you can quickly get started with it. So, whether it's a big skill improvement or a small skill improvement, they will all affect each other. And after reading the system's functions, when I wasn't awakened before, my thought was to pretend to be rotten and wait for death, because at that time it was clear that I didn't have the strength to protect everything. I couldn't do anything except pretend to be rotten and wait for death, and it was even difficult to protect myself. After awakening, the idea is to make some money, become the world's richest person or something, and then enjoy life well. However, with such a powerful system now, there must be a higher pursuit. William Lee's eyes flickered, and he couldn't help but have such thoughts. People. There must always be a pursuit. What's the point of not pursuing? But in the past, his pursuit was to wait for death by playing dumb, because he knew that without strength, except for playing dumb and waiting for death, in this dangerous world, nothing could be done. After awakening, his pursuit increased a bit, earning a lot of money and enjoying life well. However, with such a powerful system, he naturally needs to improve his pursuit. As for what to pursue, after thinking for a moment, Lee Wilhelm pondered and said, then let's pursue immortality first in a shallow way. People have an almost instinctive pursuit of lifespan. Have you not seen that many princes in history have done many absurd things in order to live longer? And William Lee is no exception, he also wants to live longer. Even compared to others, he has had the experience of being reborn from death, cherishing life more and wanting to live longer. After a pause, he seemed to have thought of something again and added, the kind of immortality with self-protection ability. After all, immortality that will not be killed by humans is the true immortality. Those who will be killed by humans are at most considered immortality. However, to put it another way, immortality is definitely not achievable at the moment. Based on the current situation, the most important thing for me is to have the ability to protect myself first. Only with this ability can I have the opportunity to pursue immortality. Of course, if possible during this period, it's best to make some more money to enjoy life. At this moment, William Lee has set his future goals. First, protect yourself, have the opportunity to earn money and enjoy life, and finally pursue a shallow pursuit of immortality. Thinking. At this moment, a crisp female voice came from downstairs. "William, come down for dinner." William Lee immediately recognized the voice of his lifelong mother, Mary Taylor. Immediately, he responded, "Come right away." As he spoke, he also rubbed and rushed downstairs. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Preliminary System Test, Miscalculated. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Preliminary System Test, Miscalculated. By the time Lee Wilhelm came down, the two of them, who had just been in a state of sweetness, had returned to normal. At the same time, a table of breakfast is also ready. As the name suggests, Lee's breakfast also belongs to the fusion of Chinese and Western cuisine. Not only soybean milk, deep-fried dough sticks, steamed stuffed buns, but also chicken steak sandwiches, vegetable salad. Among them, soybean milk, deep-fried dough sticks, steamed buns, and the like, needless to say, are naturally made by Li Wenhua, while chicken steak sandwiches and vegetable salad are made by Mary. That's right. Mary is also good at cooking. However, I am good at Western cuisine and desserts. Because of this, she and Li Wenhua only got together after meeting. They are all skilled in cooking, although in different fields, there are also many topics to talk about, and as we chat, we naturally come together. "Come on, baby, eat." As soon as William Lee came downstairs and sat at the dining table, Mary smiled and pushed breakfast in front of him. He was not polite either. After taking a sip of soybean milk, he picked up a sandwich and took a bite. After he finished eating the sandwich, Mary beside him looked at William Lee with a hopeful expression and asked, "How about it? It's better than the sandwich made by Aunt Sam next door, isn't it? I specially improved it today by reducing salad dressing and using double frying to make the chicken cutlet more crispy." Listening to these words, William Lee couldn't help but show a helpless expression. "My mother Mary is good at everything in her lifetime, but one thing is that she likes to be competitive, especially when it comes to Western cuisine and desserts. She never admits to being inferior to others. The reason why this scene happened before us is precisely because of this. Yesterday afternoon, because he felt bored staying at home, he chose to go out for a walk. Coincidentally, I met my neighbor, Aunt Sam, who was moving and preparing to leave here. And because Aunt Sam is usually very kind to him and has a good relationship with his family, he stepped forward to help lift a few hands and move some small things within his ability. Later, after moving, Aunt Sam took out her own sandwich and milk to thank him for eating. At that time, perhaps for fun, Aunt Sam even asked him if he thought the sandwich she made was delicious or Mary's. Regarding this, Lee Wilhelm, who has an adult mentality, naturally talks to people and ghosts, saying that Aunt Sam's cooking is delicious. Who knew, Mary happened to come out and ask him to come home for dinner when she heard such a sentence. As a result, there was the scene before us. However, this kind of thing has happened more than once or twice, and William Lee has already had a way to deal with it. It's very simple. Just say that Mary's cooking is delicious. But just as he was about to speak, an uncontrollable thought suddenly surged into his heart. How about it take this opportunity to try out the system features? The more he thinks, the more tempted he becomes. Finally, Lee Wilhelm's eyes rolled and he pretended to frown, saying, "It seems like it's not enough. The chicken chops are not crispy enough, and there's a bit too much salad dressing." This statement came out. Mary, who was originally looking forward to it, froze in expression. Next second, she stood up silently, took the sandwich in front of Chowda, and then turned to enter the kitchen. Almost simultaneously, detected involution behavior, start obtaining involution values. A system prompt sounded in Lee Williams' mind. Then, 6 minutes later, internal convolution value +1 another line of words appeared on the panel. 6 minutes and 1 hour. If we calculate it this way, 1 hour is 10 o'clock, and 24 hours a day is 240 o'clock. Of course, we can't actually calculate it this way. After a glimmer of brilliance in Lee Wilhelm's eyes, he began to calculate to himself and said, "Internal competition starts from having internal competition behavior, and for my cheap mother, her internal competition behavior is cooking." To be precise, when making Western cuisine, it still requires a competitive approach to be considered internal competition. But at the end of the day, apart from rest time, other times, and normal cooking time, how many things can be stirred up with competitive thoughts due to certain reasons? Just thinking about it, you know there aren't many. And, most importantly, it's not every day that I have the opportunity to get involved. This time it's because of Aunt Sam, but I can't find Aunt Sam every day, can I? She has already moved and can't even find her. So, overall, being able to get a 10.20 internal competition score in a day is already very good, and it's even possible that most of the time you won't be able to get these. At 1 or 20 o'clock a day, sometimes I can't even get it, so it has to be said that the internal competition value is a bit low. From the current skill panel, it can be seen that the internal roll value required to improve skills is a multiple. For example, for the same language, improving English LV1 requires 200 points, while improving Chinese LV2 requires 400 points. In this case, the early stage is fine. With a small base, the maximum number of days of internal competition can be added up. But later on, it became terrifying. Assuming that improving a certain skill initially requires a little bit, then in the later stages, taking improving 9 times as an example, what is needed is 1024. That is to say, after 9 rounds, a skill upgrade requires more than 1,000 times the initial amount. Calculate that the internal volume value at 10.00 or 10.00 on this day is enough to raise a mapo tofu in the future. And, this is just a multiplication algorithm. After the skill level is advanced to a very high level, will it still be calculated in multiples? Lee Wilhelm is not clear either. He only knows from the system information that the higher the skill level, the more internal competition points are needed for improvement. Thinking of this, William Lee couldn't help but shake his head. So it seems that until he enters Hogwarts, he won't be able to get too many involution points. But immediately, his mind changed and he thought to himself, however, speaking of it, the current internal competition value is not the most important thing, the most important thing is to have a skill that can have killing power. Skills with killing power are very important. The internal competition value is low, it's okay. Collect it slowly, take it slow. In the future, we will enter Hogwarts, where there are young wizards everywhere. With just a little strategy, the internal competition value will gradually increase. But without lethal skills, it's definitely not possible. You should know that this world is not a safe world, but a dangerous and beautiful world. A superhero or supervillain could emerge at any time, bringing danger. What's even more terrifying is that he's still just a 6-year-old child with no strength at all. He has almost no resistance when facing danger. Not to mention those superheroes and supervillains, even the aftermath of ordinary mutant battles can take him away. So, what he needs most now is a deadly skill. Only with lethal skills can he utilize the system to infinitely improve and thus possess self-protection ability. As for how to obtain lethal skills, this is a question William Lee couldn't help but ponder. Killing skills are nothing more than martial arts, shooting, and so on. Of course, there is Hogwarts in this world, and he has also awakened his magic, so he also needs to add magic. But he doesn't have any channels for martial arts or anything like that. You should know that he is in Sakura Kingdom, not Dragon Kingdom. For Dragon Kingdom, there are very common martial arts schools or books related to martial arts that cannot be found in this ghost place. At least for him. When he was in this world for 6 years, his surroundings were quite familiar, but he had never heard of any martial arts schools or books related to martial arts around him. Not to mention shooting, as a 6-year-old child, let alone whether his family would be willing to let him learn shooting, it's just a matter of shooting. Finally, after careful consideration for a long time, he realized that in order to have self-protection ability, he still had to rely on magic. Magic doesn't look at the body, nor does it have any reaction force. No matter how old you are, as long as you have magic, you can learn it. Once you learn it, you can kill people. The most important thing is that this thing has channels through oneself now. Thinking about it, William Lee's gaze couldn't help but fall on Mary, who was making sandwiches in the kitchen. At this moment. Come on, give it a try again. Mary just turned around and placed a new sandwich in front of William Lee, looking at him again with a hopeful expression on her face. And what about William Lee? For the sake of inner competition value, he also opened his eyes and talked nonsense. After tasting a bite, although it felt delicious, he still pretended to frown and said, "It seems like it's almost there." Suddenly, Mary's expression froze again. Afterwards, she silently took the sandwich away again and entered the kitchen. Next second, the inner scroll value in the system panel has started to increase again. William Lee watched this scene with a slight smile on his lips. But soon, he can't laugh anymore. When the third and fourth sandwiches were placed in front of William Lee, he knew he had miscalculated, seriously miscalculated. I forgot to calculate my stomach capacity. Although each sandwich is only for him to taste 1 or 2 bites, the problem is that he is only 6 years old this year. Even if it's just 1 or 2 bites of each sandwich, after 3 or 4 sandwiches, his stomach will be so full that he won't want it anymore. Finally. Well, that's right now. Lee William, who was struggling, had to admit that Mary's sandwich was delicious. Looking at the 8 points on the panel, he also realized that his previous prediction was too ideal. Don't say 1 or 20 o'clock a day, from this situation, 10 o'clock a day is even difficult. Thinking. This breakfast also came to an end with Mary's satisfied expression. After breakfast, Li Wenhua also announced a message with a hint of excitement, saying, "William, I just discussed with your mother. We are planning to go to the busiest place in the wizarding world this afternoon, a place called Diagon Alley. Do you want to go?" You can easily tell from the excitement on his face. Obviously, as an ordinary person, he is also full of curiosity and longing for this magical world that is different from that of ordinary people. However, it's also normal. As for people, they have feelings of curiosity and longing for things they have never encountered before. And for this, Lee Wilhelm was momentarily taken aback, and then a slight excitement appeared on his face. Li Wenhua has curiosity and longing for the wizarding world, doesn't he? Of course there is. Although he feels that compared to other supernatural beings, such as mutants, such as Kamatage Mage, wizards are extremely weak. But no matter what, this is his first time encountering the world of extraordinary beings. Moreover, anyone who has watched Harry Potter since childhood has never thought of entering the world of Harry Potter and becoming a wizard. He's the same. He is naturally excited to be able to enter Diagon Alley within Harry Potter and come into contact with the world of Harry Potter. I want to go. Thinking about it, William Lee said without hesitation. Okay, let's go with our family this afternoon. Li Wenhua said with a smile. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Beginner's Guide to Transformation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Beginner's Guide to Transformation soon. Time has arrived in the afternoon. Is this Diagon Alley? Li Wenhua looked at the scene before him. A long street paved with pebbles, flanked by shops and restaurants with a strong medieval style, and from the glass windows, one can still see various strange and peculiar things inside. In addition, wizards of all ages and genders, dressed in wizard robes, shuttle back and forth, entering and exiting various storefronts on the streets. Overall, Diagon Alley has a bustling and fantastical feeling. Mary smiled slightly and responded, "That's right, this is Diagon Alley." After a pause, she changed her voice and said, "Let's go in, I'll take you on a tour of this place." Speaking. She took the lead in walking in, and the two of them quickly followed suit. This is Madame Mo Jin's robe specialty store. As you can tell from its name, it specializes in selling wizard robes. This is the Ollivander Wand Shop, which specializes in selling wands, but only wizards aged 11 and above can purchase them. This is Lycan Bookstore, the largest bookstore in Diagon Alley and even the entire Sakura Kingdom magic world. Along the way, Mary introduced various well-known shops on the street to the two of them as she walked. And listening to these, looking at the various strange shops on both sides, Li Wenhua kept showing a look of surprise. As for William Lee, Lycan Bookstore, he didn't care about anything else, but when Mary introduced him to this bookstore, his eyes lit up instantly. Isn't this a good source of magic? Previously, his idea of magic was derived from Mary. After all, Mary is his lifelong mother, and getting something from her is relatively simple. But now that he saw the Lycan Bookstore, he felt there was a better source of magic. As a bookstore in the wizarding world, I am also responsible for supplying Hogwarts texts. It goes without saying that there are many related magic books inside. As long as he goes in and doesn't buy them, he doesn't even need to buy them. Just go in and find the relevant books, then open them and write down a few spells, and then he will have magic skills. Think of this. A faint and indescribable excitement flashed in Lee William's eyes. Immediately, he pretended to be obedient and grabbed Mary's hem in front of him, asking, "Bookstore. I love reading books the most. Mom, can I go to the bookstore to read a book?" To be honest, as an adult, speaking in such a tone makes him feel nauseous. But for the sake of his skills, he endured it. However, Mary and Li Wenhua didn't feel anything wrong with his tone. After all, the currently Wilhelm looks like a 6-year-old boy. Is this tone abnormal for a 6-year-old child? Reading. This. Mary frowned, hesitating. If it's a regular bookstore, Lee Wilhelm would just give up if he wanted to see her, it's not a big deal. Besides, it's also a good thing that children like to read books. Is Kellican Bookstore a regular bookstore? Of course not. As a bookstore in the wizarding world, in addition to ordinary books, there are also some books containing magical powers, and these books can cause danger if not careful. So, she hesitated a bit. Faced with her hesitation, William Lee did not react at first. In his opinion, under normal circumstances, his mother should not refuse such a request. After all, which mother would refuse a child's desire to read a book? However, upon careful consideration, he suddenly realized what had happened in the original plot. Yes, under normal circumstances, we won't refuse. But this is not a normal situation at the moment, or rather, Lycan Bookstore is not a normal bookstore. He vividly remembers a scene in the original plot where the protagonists went to the Lycan Bookstore to buy textbooks, and the textbook called Monster's Monster Book bit people on the spot. In this situation, it's normal for Mary to hesitate. After realizing it, William Lee thought for a moment and found a solution. He pretended to be ignorant and said, however, I don't know what to read, why don't Mom recommend a book to me? He chooses it himself, but Mary hesitates because some of the books in the bookstore are dangerous. But Mary's choice is different. She chose it herself, there must be no danger. As for whether this will select something that William Lee doesn't like or doesn't use definitely. After all, she didn't know what book William Lee really wanted. But on the other hand, if William Lee doesn't like it or doesn't need it, wouldn't it be enough to just switch to another one? After all, as a child now, he can be completely capricious, on the other side. Mary immediately reacted to William Lee's words. Yes. Let Lee Wilhelm choose for himself, that definitely won't work. Because some of the books in Lycan bookstore are dangerous. But if she helps choose, then naturally there will be no problem. She's not stupid, she won't choose any dangerous books for her children. With this in mind, Mary smiled and said, all right, Mom can help you choose a book. As she spoke, she walked into the bookstore with the two of them. After a brief glance, she picked up a book, handed it to William Lee, and smiled, just this one. William Lee took over and took a closer look. The development history of wizards. This is clearly not magic. Immediately, after pretending to flip through a few pages, he frowned and said, Mom, I don't like reading this book. That's great. Listen, Mary didn't care either. She picked up another book and handed it to William Lee. William Lee took over and took a look. Introduction to Magic Potions. I want it, but it's not urgent at the moment. Thinking about it, he took the book and looked at it a few times before frowning and saying, I don't like this book either. Just replace it with another one. Mary still didn't care and gave it another one. I don't like it. Not good. Looking. I don't want to see it. Next, William Lee used the same excuse to make Mary change several books in a row. Fortunately, he is only 6 years old now and has the qualification to be stubborn. If he were an adult and dared to do so, he would have been beaten long ago. However, after taking another book, Mary hesitated as she looked at the title. There is no other reason. Because this book is called Beginner's Guide to Transformation, a book that teaches transformation techniques. Metamorphosis, also known as Metamorphosis Curse, is a quite dangerous magic. You can turn something into anything, even into a living thing, or turn a living thing into another living thing, or something, but if you accidentally recite a little wrong spell when releasing it, it may cause some irreversible consequences. So, Mary only showed a hesitant expression. But William Lee's eyes lit up as he looked at the book in Mary's hand. That's it, that's what I want. Having watched the original plot, he knows that metamorphosis is a magic with destructive power. Directly use a person to turn them into animals, plants, or even stones. In addition, shape-shifting also has certain defense and daily use. For example, when encountering enemies, one can turn something into a shield or a cage to cover oneself, while outdoors, if one wants to find a place to sit but there is no good place, one can also turn something into a chair or something like that. It can be said to be a fairly comprehensive magic. It is also suitable for him now. Now, in terms of the source of his inner competition value, he only has his mother Mary, and he is only 6 years old and doesn't have much magic. Therefore, when it comes to learning skills, his idea is that miscellaneous is better than refined. Having learned too much, he doesn't have any inner competition points to add, nor does he have any magic release. Why not just learn one? In this way, the involution value is increased enough, and the magic is also released enough. But then again, if you only learn one, then naturally the more comprehensive the better. After all, who knows what dangers he will encounter in the future. Comprehensiveness means being able to deal with more dangers. Thinking about it, he also saw the hesitation on Mary's face. After a moment of reflection, he also roughly understood Mary's hesitation. Yes, magic is not a toy. In the magic world, magic is like a gun in the ordinary world, with strong killing power. As long as a person with a normal brain, they will not let a child take a gun. Of course. Understanding is understanding, but can William Lee just not learn like this? Of course not. You know, he learned magic to protect himself. So, we need to use some tricks. William Lee's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. First Magic Skill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 First Magic Skill. Mary's hesitant point is that shape-shifting itself is magic and has destructive power. And William Lee is just a 6-year-old child, and if he is not careful, he may harm others or himself. So, if we want her to agree, we must solve the points she hesitated about thinking. Show me. Lee Wilhelm pretended to be a child who couldn't wait, and took advantage of Mary's hesitation to directly bring the standard spell beginner in her hand. After flipping through 2 pages briefly, he pretended to be confused and said, Beginner's Guide to Metamorphosis. I like it. Just want a wand. Are you going to buy a wand from the wand store my mom just mentioned? I have to mention it here. In the world of magic, wands are quite important things. If magic is compared to stones, then wands are like slingshots. Only with slingshots can stones fly out. Of course, without a slingshot, it is possible to throw stones as far as a slingshot with bare hands, but the difficulty is not something that ordinary people can achieve. And this is his little trick. Mary doesn't think that shape-shifting is magic with killing power, and that children may learn to harm others or themselves. William Lee reminded him that even if there were spells, they were useless. When a wizard releases magic, they need a wand, and without a wand, it cannot be released. Therefore, it is not a problem for him to read this book. In this way, Mary naturally won't stop anymore. As he expected. Suddenly, Mary was also awakened. Yes. This book is good for teaching spells, but without a wand, it is impossible to release it unless you master the advanced technique of casting without a wand. But the advanced technique of casting spells without a staff, let alone a child, is something that even she and most adult wizards cannot master. Only some top wizards in the wizarding world, such as Snape and the Dumbledore people, or wizards who specialize in a certain magic, can cast that magic without a wand. But to practice a magic to that level, the difficulty is quite terrifying, and it is definitely not something that a child can reach. In this situation, it seems that there shouldn't be any problem for William Lee to read this book, right? Mary, who had the answer, didn't hesitate any longer. She smiled and said, This is a book about magic, and to use the magic inside, you must have a wand. However, according to the rules of the wizarding world, wands can only be possessed after the age of 11. So, there's no problem reading this book, but you can't have a wand. Oh. After a hint of inexplicable joy flashed in Lee William's eyes, a sudden expression appeared on the surface, and he obediently said, Then I'll just read books. Without a wand, releasing magic is indeed a problem. But for him, this is not a problem. As long as there is enough internal competition value, adding it to the skill can cast spells without a staff, isn't that enough? That's also why he mentioned that without a wand, one cannot cast spells. If he can't cast spells without relying on his wand, then he will definitely not bring this up as a hindrance to himself. And speaking. He also lowered his head and started flipping through the book, ready to study quickly. At this moment, Mary smiled and said, Baby, let's buy this book back and read it slowly. They are here to play in Diagon Alley this time. If William Lee is reading here, as adults, they can only accompany him. The Kellican bookstore is not a fun place, and if he accompanies him, it is equivalent to wasting time. All right. Lee Wilhelm quickly responded upon hearing this. It's obviously better to buy it back and take a slow look. And afterwards. Mary brought William Lee to the cashier and placed the book on the table, saying, Hello, I need this book. Okay, I'll charge you a gold medal, the staff said and packaged the book. Mary took out a gold coin from her pocket and placed it on the table. Immediately, the staff collected the gold coins and gave Mary the packaged books. Mary handed it to William Lee without hesitation. William Lee also happily held the book. Gold coins. At this moment, Li Wenhua on the side looked at the currency that Mary had just given, but was somewhat curious. Upon hearing this, Mary explained, "This is Jin Jialong, a unique currency in the wizarding world. All consumption in the wizarding world must use this currency." Oh! Li Wenhua suddenly realized. But immediately, he asked curiously again and said, "Can cherry pounds be exchanged for this thing?" "Of course, 5 cherry pounds can be exchanged for 1. Mary responded casually. 5 cherry pounds. In an instant, Li Wenhua's eyes lit up. Although he had not inquired about the specific price of gold outside, he knew that no matter how much 5 cherry pounds it was, he could never buy a gram, let alone that gold coin that looked more than 1 gram. If you could exchange 5 cherry pounds for a gold coin and sell it outside, wouldn't that make you rich? Thinking of this, Li Wenhua became even more excited. Immediately, he said eagerly, "Where can I exchange it? I want to go and exchange a little bit." This statement comes out. Mary immediately explained, "This thing can be exchanged in the white building called Gringotts at the end of the street over there. Gringotts is the bank of the wizarding world." After a pause, she showed a smirk on her face again, as if seeing through everything, and said, "However, if you want to exchange Sakura pounds for golden garan and then take it outside to exchange, I advise you to give up this thought." Li Wenhua, who was seen through his thoughts, scratched his head with some embarrassment and said curiously, "Why?" Mary smiled and explained, "First of all, under normal circumstances, Jin Jialong and Sakura pound cannot be exchanged for each other. The reason why I mentioned that the 5 cherry pounds can be exchanged for golden gallon is because Hogwarts and Gringotts, after discussing with the Ministry of Magic, specifically provided for some muggles, who are ordinary people and do not have magic currency but need currency to buy books, to exchange. And, this is not something that can be redeemed indefinitely. The maximum amount that can be redeemed per year is 100 gold coins, and it can also be offered to students who graduate at Hogwarts at most. Finally, you wouldn't think this thing was pure gold, would you?" At the end, Mary showed a playful expression. "Not pure gold?" Li Wenhua asked in confusion. "Of course not." Mary smiled and said, "This thing is just a bit of gold, made by mixing magic. It's really a loss for 5 cherry pounds to sell each one." Oh! Li Wenhua suddenly realized. Afterwards, Mary added a serious tone and said, "Although the outside world of the wizarding world may not know, it is not completely cut off from the outside world. Every year, many ordinary wizards from ordinary backgrounds enter, so the lower echelons of the wizarding world may not know about the outside world, but the higher echelons probably know about the general situation of the outside world. Among them, they are even more clear about the price of gold and so on." After a pause, she joked, "After all, there are plenty of people like you who want to speculate every year." Upon hearing this, Li Wenhua's old face couldn't help but blush. And as Li Wilhelm listened to this, he also showed a sudden expression. Anyone who has watched Harry Potter will have an idea. If 1 golden dragon is exchanged for 5 cherry pounds, then exchanging the money for the golden dragon and selling it will make a fortune. After all, if Jin Jialong is made of gold, then why does a Jin Jialong look worth more than 5 cherry pounds? William Lee once had such an idea. Now he knows that this idea is not feasible. However, thinking about it, I also know that although the wizarding world is isolated from the world, not all are fools. How could such a big bug be left behind? Say it again. Every year, Muggle-born wizards enter the wizarding world. If such a big bug had been discovered long ago, how could it have been left until now? Then, the 3 of them left the bookstore and started wandering the streets again. It's night. William Lee also returned home. The first thing I did when I got home was to go back to my room and open the beginner's deformation guide to read. After a long time. There is an extra column in his skill list. Magic, LV 0.1/10,000. Metamorphosis, LV 0.1/100, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. Skill Upgrade. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Skill Upgrade. Finally, I have a lethal skill. Lee Wilhelm looked at the deformation technique inside the panel, and a smile appeared on his face. With the ability to kill, he is one step closer to being able to protect himself. However, he quickly regained his composure. It's good to have a skill, but it can't be released right now. After all, he doesn't have a wand. So, now he needs a lot of inner competition points. Add the skills until he can cast without a staff. Well, don't ask him why he doesn't practice on his own. Lee Wilhelm looked out the window at the moon, which had already risen to mid-air, and couldn't help but show a sigh. It has been 5 or 6 hours since he returned and saw the skill appearing on the system panel while reading a book, and it has only just made the transformation spell appear in the system panel. Based on this situation, if he practices it himself, there won't be 1 or 2 months left, so it's probably impossible for him to upgrade his transformation skills. However, this is also normal. On the one hand, William Lee had no one to teach him, and reading relied solely on his own understanding, which invisibly increased the difficulty. On the other hand, don't be fooled by the fact that the Beginner's Metamorphosis Guide only sells for $1 gold, but this is not only Hogwarts textbook in the original plot, but also a textbook in the Metamorphosis course that will only be changed when the 3rd grade is reached. That is to say, for ordinary Hogwarts students, this book actually needs to be studied for 2 years, or under the guidance of someone. In 1 or 2 months, without anyone's guidance, completing 2 years of courses, the learning speed is definitely fast. The learning speed is fast when it comes to calculation, but if he has the time, it's better to work on the internal competition score, which would actually be faster. Thinking. That's all I can do. Mom. William Lee's eyes flickered with a hint of brilliance, and he couldn't help but murmur. He currently only has one channel to obtain inner competition values, so if he wants to get more inner competition values, he can only fall on Mary. At the same time, Mary, who was sleeping soundly in the room next to William Lee, suddenly shuddered and opened her eyes, waking up. I always feel like something bad is about to happen, she murmured. But it was already late at night, and she didn't pay much attention. She turned her head and continued to sleep. The next afternoon, after strolling around outside, William Lee returned home. William, have you come back? Mary, who was in the kitchen, smiled and said, exactly, I made some donuts. Let's have afternoon tea together. Speaking. The corner of her eye suddenly caught sight of Lee Wilhelm holding something in his hand. Oh, William, what's that in your hand? She asked curiously. It's the homemade cake that Lisa's sister gave me. William Lee said with a hint of brilliance in his eyes, pretending to be ignorant. Lisa is a neighbor not far from the same community, a girl in her 20s. Because he is cute, Lisa likes him very much and often treats him to eat. And today this cake was also given by Lisa. Although William Lee was wandering around and smelled the aroma of the cake, he just came knocking on his door. Oh. Mary suddenly realized. Come on, Mom, give it a try. I think Lisa's sister makes it more delicious than yours. William Lee handed the small cake to Mary and said very straightforwardly. Listen. Mary's face froze instantly. She can do anything, but she will never give up on Western desserts. Thinking. Mom will make you a better little cake. After leaving this sentence, without any hesitation, she turned around and entered the kitchen, starting to make a small cake. In no time, a line of words appeared in Lee Wilhelm's system panel. Internal convolution value +1. Seeing this, he showed a smile of successful strategy. And this. It's just the beginning. In the next few days, similar scenes will continue to repeat. This is a grilled cookie given to me by Grandpa Green, who loves cooking next door. It seems to be more delicious than what you make. This is the pizza that Aunt Lisa gave me across the street. I think it's really delicious. This is the latest strawberry cake that the dessert shop outside the community has exited. It's quite good. For the sake of internal competition value, Lee Wilhelm also fought hard. I go out every day, wander around the community, smell the smell, and find the doors of my neighbors who are making things. And because the overall atmosphere of the community is good, the neighbors are also very friendly to each other, coupled with the identity of a child. Whenever he comes to his door following the scent, those enthusiastic neighbors are very enthusiastic to share some of their things with him. Afterwards. With these things in hand, William turned around and went home, then told Mary that Mary had to roll them up. Of course. There are only a few neighbors in the community, and not everyone is doing things every day. So. In the end, Lee Wilhelm, who had no other choice, even took out all his pocket money to buy desserts at a dessert shop outside the community in order to earn more money and allow Mary to continue rolling. Under this series of operations, several consequences were directly caused. Mary, who is competitive, has been racking her brains to make things and dim sum almost every day. In a few days, her hair has turned white. But at the same time, her expertise in desserts and Western cuisine is increasing day by day, and in the end, even Lee Wilhelm, who is solely focused on internal competition, can hardly speak ill of it. And William Lee also gained 8 pounds. In order to gain more involution value and keep Mary constantly curling up, he had to force herself to eat even when she was full. Mary prepared something and said it wasn't delicious, so she continued to cook and roll. Also, it is worth mentioning that he was given the nickname Snack Goods by his neighbors in the community because he searched everywhere every day for neighbors who were cooking and came to pick things up. Well, it doesn't sound like much, even a bit cute. But if it were a real child, of course it wouldn't be a big deal, but as a psychologically adult, William Lee has been given the slightly cute title of Snack Guy, which not only makes him feel goosebumps all over, but also makes him feel a bit embarrassed. However, for the sake of internal competition value, he still endured it. And this series of efforts, 10 days later today, can also be considered as having results. System, give me some extra points. Looking at the internal convolution value that had reached 102 points on the system panel, William Lee muttered excitedly. Next second. The involution value is like a dam opening, pouring down. 80, 70. 60, we'll see the bottom soon. At the same time, the value of the transformation spell in the skills is also rapidly increasing. 10, 20. 30, in no time, the value reached 99. Next second. When the value changes from 99 to 100, it becomes 0 again. But at the same time, the level of metamorphosis has also changed from LV 0.99/100 to LV 1.0/200. And a massive amount of information also flooded into William Lee's mind. The key points of the spell for shape-shifting, the techniques for using shape-shifting, and the precautions for using shape-shifting, etc. At this moment, William Lee seemed to have practiced shape-shifting thousands of times. I know all the transformation techniques like the palm of my hand. It can be said that by giving him a wand now, he can unleash a transformation spell on the spot. Finally upgraded. Lee Wilhelm couldn't help but sigh. These days, he has put in so much effort and even lost a lot of face, isn't it just for this moment? However, soon he calmed down again. Upgrade is an upgrade. But it hasn't met his expectations yet. At this level, one cannot cast spells without a staff. So, what hasn't been successful yet? Comrades still need to work hard. After a few words of encouragement, William Lee began to devote himself to the cause of Mary's internal competition. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. New Neighbors, Successful Strategy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 New Neighbors, Successful Strategy. Early the next morning. Ding dong. The doorbell of Lee Wilhelm's house was ringing. Here we go. After agreeing, Mary went to the door and opened it. What caught the eye was a woman and a little girl. The woman has brown hair, a delicate appearance, wearing jeans and a gray top, a faint smile on her face, and a gift box in her hand. The little girl next to her was wearing a white dress, black boat shoes, white stockings, fair skin, brown hair, and very thick and fluffy. Under this hair, a pair of brown eyes appeared bright and lively. Are you guys? Looking at the two of them, Mary couldn't help but frown. She can be certain that she doesn't know these two people. The woman smiled and replied, "We are new neighbors who have moved in next door. This is a small gesture of goodwill." As she spoke, she handed Mary the gift box in her hand. Oh. Mary suddenly realized that she was a new neighbor. Immediately. She took the gift box and politely said, "Nice to meet you." After a pause, she curiously asked again, "By the way, haven't you asked yet? My name is Monica Granger, you can also call me Mrs. Granger." Mrs. Granger smiled and answered, then pulled over the little girl beside her and said, "This is my daughter, Hermione Granger." "Hello, madam." Hermione also gave a timely and polite greeting. "Hello, Hermione." After responding with a smile, Mary also introduced herself and said, "My name is Mary Taylor, you can call me Mrs. Lee. That one over there is my son, William Lee." As she spoke, she waved to William Lee, who was sitting in the living room reading a book, and said, "Baby, come over and say hello to your new neighbor." And now. Lee Wilhelm is already confused. Completely confused. Hermione Granger is a name that others don't know, can he still not know? Isn't this the female lead in Harry Potter who meows? However, after a moment of confusion, what followed was an inner ecstasy. The acquisition of involution value is not only influenced by extraordinary abilities, but also by their combat power and luck. And Hermione must have no combat power now, but as the female protagonist, there must be a strong aura in her body. What does this represent? It represents that William Lee can brush out a lot of internal competition values from her. It's really like sitting at home, blessings come from heaven. Thinking. He suppressed his inner ecstasy, stood up quietly on the surface, and approached Hermione and her mother, politely saying to Mrs. Granger, "Hello, Auntie." After a pause, he said to Hermione again, "Hello." "Okay." Mrs. Granger smiled and said, "Hello." Hermione also politely responded. At this moment. "Your child seems to be about the same age as my Hermione. How old is he this year?" Mrs. Granger asked curiously. Women with children often like to talk about their children. Mrs. Granger is no exception. And now, it happened to hit Mary's heart. "I'm 6 years old this year." After answering with a smile, she exclaimed curiously, "Where are your children?" "6 years old too." Mrs. Granger said. "What a coincidence." "Yeah, it's a coincidence. Where do your children go to school?" "She used to be at Ward Elementary School, but haven't she moved recently? We're planning to transfer her to the nearby aristocratic school, Green School." "Green School. What a coincidence. My child is studying there and is in 2nd grade this year." "Really? How are your children's grades on a regular basis?" "It's just average, it's just the first place in the whole school." "First place in the whole school. It's amazing. My daughter used to be first in Ward Elementary School, but I heard that studying at Green School is more intense and her overall grades are better. I don't know if her grades will decrease when she transfers to Green School." The two of them chatted and unconsciously talked about their child's education and learning. And listening to their conversation. Especially when Hermione heard that William Lee was the top student in Green School, a glimmer of brilliance flashed in her eyes. She squinted her eyes at William Lee and said, "Are you the top student in Green School?" "Yeah, what's wrong?" William Lee asked in response. "In Sakura Country, children are usually enrolled at the age of 5. He is 6 years old this year and happens to be in 2nd grade. As for being the top student in the whole school, just kidding. He is a college graduate, and if he can't be the top student in the whole school even in his 2nd year, he might as well die. After the school starts next week, I will be the first in the whole school." Hermione looked at William Lee in front of her, as if speaking a fact, and said lightly. "This statement comes out." Lee Wilhelm instinctively wanted to smile, and then followed her. After all, he doesn't have much intention of competing with a 6-year-old girl. But suddenly, a flash of inspiration flashed through his mind, and he had other thoughts. Perhaps can we take this opportunity to brush Hermione's inner circle value? Think of this. Hee. After chuckling lightly twice, Lee Wilhelm said lightly, "Your joke is really funny. When the school starts and the exams are held, I'll let you know that I'm not joking." Hermione didn't get angry either, but said seriously. "School starts." After a sneer, William Lee said, "If you want me to know, you don't have to wait until school starts." "What does that mean?" Hermione asked in confusion. "It's very simple." Lee Wilhelm said solemnly, "Now, let's find a place to ask each other questions, and it will be clear at a glance who has good grades." After a pause, he added in a provocative tone, "Aren't you afraid?" "What's there to be afraid of?" "Now, immediately, find a place for us to compare." Hermione agreed immediately upon hearing this. Compared to others, she may not necessarily have confidence, but in terms of grades, she believes she will not lose to any peers. Hear the words. "Don't go anywhere else, just go to my house and my room." Lee Wilhelm sneered. "Okay." Hermione also decisively agreed. Afterwards. "Mom, I took her to my room." William Lee said to Mary. "Mom, I went to his room." Hermione said the same to her own mother. Go. Mary and Mrs. Granger exchanged a glance and answered with a smile. Their words just now naturally fell into the ears of Mary and Mrs. Granger. Regarding this, the two of them had no intention of stopping, and even had a bit of joy. As parents, if a child is more likely to watch animations or play games than others, they may not necessarily be happy, but which parent would be unhappy about their grades? After receiving their agreement, William Lee said directly, "Let's go, come with me." As he spoke, he led the way to his room on the 2nd floor. Hermione followed without hesitation upon seeing the situation. Just when Hermione didn't see it, there was a subtle glint in William Lee's eyes as he went upstairs. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Ideas with Billions of Losses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Ideas with Billions of Losses. I actually lost. Hermione looked at the questions and grades on the 2 sheets of paper in front of her, with an incredible expression on her face. One is a question she gave, 10 questions are calculated at 100 points, and William Lee gave 100 points. The other one was a question by William Lee, which was calculated at 100 points for 10 questions. She racked her brains to do it, but only managed to score 60 points. Just now, after the two of them went upstairs, without much ado, they got straight to the main topic. Each person took a piece of paper and asked each other 10 questions, which were completed within 30 minutes. As a result, the scene before us appeared. But suddenly. Wait, no. She looked at the question posed by William Lee and realized the problem. She suddenly looked up at William Lee and said, "You're not even a 2nd grade question." Regarding this, Lee Wilhelm instead pretended to look at her in surprise and said, no one in second grade can't even solve third grade problems, can they? You. Now, Hermione was directly infuriated. But immediately, she suppressed her anger, gritted her teeth, and said, what's your aura? Next time, when I learn third grade content, I will definitely surpass you. Next time. All right. I'll give you a chance, give you time, let's compare again in a month. How about that? After Lee Wilhelm said this, his voice changed and he sneered, of course, if you think 1 month is not enough, 2 or 3 months are also possible. A month. Hermione glared angrily at William Lee and gritted her teeth, no need, a week, just a week, I can definitely defeat you. Don't say too much. William Lee sneered. Then you just watch. After giving William a fierce glare, Hermione left a sentence without saying much, then turned around and left the room. As he watched her leave, William Lee immediately restrained his expression and showed a slight excitement, whispering, come on, girl. When William Lee came down from upstairs, Hermione and her mother had already left. Baby, did you win? Mary asked gently. Of course we won. William Lee responded with a smile. Sure enough, William from my family is still amazing. Mary smiled and praised, then changed her voice and said, by the way, this is a gift left by Mrs. Granger just now. It's a homemade cookie. You can try it. As she spoke, she pointed to the open gift box on the table next to her. Well, good. After nodding, Lee Wilhelm approached and took a piece to try. Well, to be honest, it's not bad. How is it? Is it delicious? Mary asked. Compared to what Mom did, upon hearing these words, Lee Wilhelm instinctively wanted to say that it tasted better than Mary's and make Mary curl up again. But as he spoke, he thought of something and his voice changed, saying, it tastes worse than what Mom makes. The reason for saying this is naturally because she doesn't want Mary to be caught up in the competition anymore. The reason why I used to focus on my cheap mother and keep her rolling was because she was the only one around me who could contribute inner role points, and Lee Wilhelm urgently needed inner role points, so I had to keep an eye on her. But now with Hermione's appearance, there's no need to keep an eye on her. On the other hand, after so many days, Lee Wilhelm also realized that his cheap mother Mary was probably already vaguely aware of what he was doing. It was only because of the powerful camouflage effect brought by William Lee's current age, as well as her usual mature performance, that she has not been certain. But if William Lee continues, it will definitely be discovered. I'm afraid a chubby beating will be inevitable when the time comes. Also, these days of internal competition have also exhausted Mary, and if it continues, he is afraid that Mary's health will be affected. Finally, it's also for personal consideration. He has already gained 8 pounds these days. If this continues, he will transform from a rectangle to a circle. Of course. If it's just a little overweight, it's actually nothing. But the problem is, his speed of gaining weight is too fast. I gained 8 pounds in just a few days, and if I had a few more days, I'm afraid I would have gained another 10 or 20 pounds. With such a rapid rate of obesity, I don't need to think about it, as it can affect my health. It's night. Just as William Lee finished dinner and returned to his room to rest, there was movement inside the panel. Internal convolution value +1 internal convolution value +1 internal convolution value +1 Almost 2 minutes later, there was a message of an increase in the inner roll value. As he watched, a look of excitement couldn't help but flow out of William Lee's eyes. Once every 2 minutes, that's how you get a 30-point internal competition score in an hour. She is truly the protagonist of Harry Potter. 1 hour is more than the 3 days of internal competition he got on Mary combined. According to this situation, the day of upgrading the transformation spell again is not far away. Afterwards, time gradually passes by. Until 4 hours later, when Lee Wilhelm was already taking a shower and preparing to sleep, his involution value continued to increase. This also made him sigh and say, "It's truly Hermione." In the original plot, Hermione is a super expert who is caught up in internal competition. In order to learn more courses, in the original plot, she even borrowed a time converter from Professor McGonagall to ensure that she could attend 2 different courses at the same time. Don't forget the rolled ones. Now, this is somewhat within Lee Wilhelm's expectations. Thinking. He is ready to turn off the lights and go to sleep. Although he felt excited as he watched the rapid increase in his involution score, he had to admit that at the age of 6, his weak body really couldn't stay up late. So, let's wake up tomorrow and watch again. After whispering a sentence, William Lee reached out and turned off the light. But just as he was about to go to bed, the corner of his eye suddenly caught a faint light coming from the window. What is this? With confusion, he walked to the window of his room and opened it to take a look. At a glance, he saw the second floor of Hermione's villa, which had just moved in next door. In the room opposite him by the window, there were still lights on. And the light just now was nothing else, it was the light coming from that room. Upon closer inspection, he also saw a small shadow in the opposite room, writing something with its head down. That's Hermione. After squinting his eyes and looking for a while, Lee Wilhelm realized that the person across from him who was writing something with his head down was none other than Hermione. So her room is right across from me, he said suddenly. And look at Hermione's hard work. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration flashed in Lee Wilhelm's mind, and an idea that was worth billions of dollars appeared in his mind. But, isn't this too damaging? As soon as the idea arose, he unconsciously asked himself. But in the end, the internal competition value is really tempting. After a thought flashed through his mind, he abandoned all his worries and walked directly to the nearby desk. He found a flashlight in the drawer of the desk and then took out a piece of white paper and scissors for handicrafts from the table. After cutting the white paper with scissors and shaping it into a humanoid shape, he placed the flashlight behind the cut paper and then turned it on towards the window. Next second, a shadow appeared on the window of his room, as if he was bowing his head and studying hard. See what's happening. Lee Wilhelm just showed a satisfied smile and then turned to bed, on the other side. Hermione, who was feeling tired from studying, couldn't help but yawn. Immediately. How about going to bed first and learning tomorrow? She came up with such an idea. But at that moment, the corner of her eye accidentally caught sight of the scene outside the window. It's so late, he's still studying. Hermione couldn't help but frown. Through her own window, she saw a faint light emanating from the window across from her with curtains drawn, and could tell that the room was not turned off. Upon closer inspection, one can still see a shadow above the curtains, and from the outline of the shadow, one can vaguely see that a person is sitting with their head down, trying to learn something. Knowing that Hermione was facing William Lee, she instinctively assumed that William Lee was also working hard to learn. No, his grades are better than mine and he works so hard. I have to work even harder. Hermione, who was originally feeling a bit sleepy and preparing to sleep, mustered up her energy and continued to study hard. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Buy 2 more batteries. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Buy 2 more batteries. Morning. As the soft sunlight shone on his face, William Lee slowly opened his eyes. After stretching his waist, he murmured, "You slept so comfortably." And whispering, he didn't wash up immediately. Instead he opened the system panel and looked at it. He hasn't forgotten yet that Hermione was contributing to his internal competition score last night. Because I went to bed early, I didn't see how much internal competition value Hermione contributed in the end. Now that I'm up, I naturally need to see how much internal competition value Hermione contributed to him last night. And the next second. 2:15, this number appeared in the eyes of William Lee. Get rich overnight. This is William Lee's first idea. Think about before, after putting in a lot of effort and struggling to save over 100 points in 10 days, what about now? Just one night, over 200 o'clock, this is not overnight wealth. What is it? Immediately. You can upgrade now. This is William Lee's second idea. 200 points, which is exactly the number of points required for upgrading the transformation spell. What are you waiting for? After such a thought flashed through his mind, Lee Wilhelm didn't hesitate to point the inner convolution value on the transformation technique. 200, 150. 100, suddenly, the inner roll values in the system panel poured down. At the same time, the values behind the transformation technique also rapidly increase. In a moment, the transformation technique has changed from LV 1.0/200 to LV 2.0/400. A huge flow of information also flooded into William Lee's mind. At this moment, he seemed to have learned more than 10 years of shape-shifting, and was very familiar with its spell points, usage techniques, and precautions. And the most important thing is, you can cast spells without a staff. William Lee's eyes flashed with a hint of brilliance. Casting spells without a staff has always been the most desired thing for him. Because this represents that he already has the initial power to protect himself in this world. Even if this power is not strong, at least there are protective measures in case of danger. Thinking. Lee Wilhelm's mind changed and he thought excitedly, let's go out and find a place to try the transformation technique later. Since you can use the transformation technique now, it's natural to give it a try as soon as possible. And speaking of this, it's also his first time using magic, and it's a bit exciting to think about it. As for why we need to go out, Mary is at home. If he were to cast spells at home, if Mary had noticed, he would definitely not have escaped the heavy beating. After all, magic is dangerous and he is too young. No matter how he uses it without a wand, Mary will get angry. It's like going to the river to fish when I was a child. Even if I catch a fish and come home, I would still be beaten up by the adults at home. There's no other reason. It's dangerous by the river, soon. I'm going out for a stroll. After finishing breakfast, William Lee spoke to Mary and left home. He is going to the nearby park to find a hidden place to try. However, as soon as he left, he met Hermione. At this moment, Hermione's fair face had an extra visible black eye circle than usual, and her overall condition was also visibly poor. She half squinted her eyes and kept yawning. You can tell at a glance that she is very tired. And just as William Lee saw her, she also saw William Lee. Immediately, she mustered up her energy and walked up to her, saying in a faint tone, "You studied quite late last night. You didn't go to bed until midnight. Listen." William Lee recognized the hidden meaning in her words. She's showing off. Show off that you studied later than William Lee. This may sound plain and seem to be telling a fact, but in reality, if it weren't for going to bed later than William Lee, how could one know he went to bed at 12? However, listening to her boastful words, William Lee remained calm on the surface, but his heart was about to burst into laughter. Did he study late? No, he ran out of battery early. He, who has watched movies, is very clear about Hermione's personality. Smart yet somewhat competitive. In this situation, Lee Wilhelm is 100% certain that as long as she sees that Lee Wilhelm is still asleep and studying, she will definitely not fall asleep like that. So, last night, he only had that operation before going to bed. A simple paper cuttings projection was made with a flashlight and cut white paper, so that the shadow was printed on the window, just because Hermione thought he was awake. Of course. Due to the limitations of the times, flashlights nowadays are different from those in the future that can easily shine for half a day. They use batteries, and generally, 1 or 2 hours of illumination is not enough. So, last night Hermione only contributed over 200 points of internal competition. Otherwise, if the battery of the flashlight persists a little longer, Hermione's personality is likely to learn even later. You actually know I'm going to bed at 12. William Lee pretended to be surprised. He understands Hermione's thoughts, isn't he just trying to show off that she studied later than William Lee? Then please satisfy her. Just consider Hermione as a reward for contributing so many inner role points. He even gave back a red date when he hit a stick. He pulled so much wool from Hermione, so it's not fair not to give him some compensation, is it? Looking at William Lee's surprised expression, Hermione immediately satisfied her desire to show off. After a glimmer of joy flashed in her eyes, she spoke in an unusually light and indifferent tone, as if telling a fact, I usually learn a little bit. A little bit. Lee Wilhelm showed another look of shock and said, it seems that you are really working hard to surpass me. After a pause, he squinted his eyes and stared at Hermione, coldly saying, however, I won't give you a chance. Starting tonight, I will learn 2 things. Well, buy 2 more batteries on the way back later. He silently thought in his heart. And as soon as these words come out, Hermione also refused to be outdone and said, no matter how hard you try, I will definitely work harder than you. Tonight, I will study until 3 o'clock. Exactly what I want. William Lee was ecstatic in his heart, but on the surface, he glared angrily at Hermione, as if in a combative tone, and said, if you study until 3 o'clock, then I will study until 4 o'clock. In short, I will definitely be later than you. Hee hee. Then let's just wait and see. Hermione sneered and said these words, then shook her head and left here directly. As he watched her figure gradually disappear from his sight, William Lee, who had been keeping his face taut, couldn't help but smile and exclaimed, Hermione is really easy to deceive now. With just a little guidance, he fell for it. However, it's normal to think about it. Although Hermione always portrayed a smart girl in the original plot, no matter how smart she is only 6 years old this year. A 6-year-old child, no matter how smart they are, where can they go? She is not William Lee. On the surface she appears to be 6 years old, but on the inside she is already in her 30s, and she is also full of bad water. Thinking. William Lee also left here. He is also planning to go to the park to try out his transformation technique. End of this chapter.